Welcome to the Bachelor Universe podcast. I am your host, Jim Alexander. Today we will be going over 2 episodes of The Bachelorette. We will be going over the 5th episode and the 6th episode. They were running back-to-back nights on Monday and Tuesday. So that was the Tuesday night was because of the NBA Finals, preempting it before a couple weeks ago. So they're making up for it. And we got 2 episodes for Monday and Tuesday. So without further ado, let's get into it. Episode 5 will be starting first. And that's where the Kenny versus Lee continuation of their feud. We were left up like when they're starting to tussle and go at it. So basically, we start out with Lee and Kenny going at it, of course. But Brian, while those two are arguing, Brian gets some time with Rachel. And they don't really converse much or talk. They just go straight into making out right away. So Brian making time, good time of his usage of his time. Whatever, he's doing it. And then Lee and Kenny... Well, Kenny steps up his game by calling Lee a snake. So now we have a nickname for Lee. He is the snake, apparently. I don't know if that's supposed to be a diss. Lee doesn't care, apparently. The best thing about this heated convo is that Iggy and Will are staring at him from behind a window. So there's like a stare down, just watching these events. It's not that exciting, right? We've forgotten about... in this group rose date that the rose is going to be given out. This is still a group date, so there is a rose up for grabs. And that one, without further ado or any questions, goes to Brian. So he got his smooch in, he got his rose in. That's all he needs to do. Let those others fight. Then back to Kenny and Lee. It's just like a back and forth. Kenny takes another minor shot at Lee by congratulating Brian on the rose. So he thinks that Lee will get fed up with that. But he also ups the ante. He goes from snake to calling Lee a bitch. So I guess Kenny's stepping up. Now, forgotten all this feud between Kenny and Lee was that Jack Stone had a date, and we forgot about Jack Stone's date. Do you remember Jack Stone? Neither do I. So he does have a date, though, with Rachel. But the thing is, he just comes off immediately as a creeper. No questions about it. Like, he just, like, stares at her, and he acts so goofy, and not goofy in a fun way, but goofy in a creepy, weirdo way. Just the way he looks at her, the way he talks to her. Their chemistry from the get-go is literally stone cold. No pun intended. Okay, I had to. It wasn't working. So we'll go back to the resort hotel. Will makes an appearance again and confronts Lee about putting Kenny in a bad position by, making him look like an angry black man. Not Lee, Kenny. That, he's being susceptible to being viewed as one by America and audiences, and Lee's kind of pushing it into that. I don't agree with it because what is Lee going to say that's going to make Kenny look bad? Kenny's in control of his own emotions and feelings and the way he talks and presents himself, right? Lee could try, but it's ultimately Kenny that's presenting himself. So if he wants to present himself in a good light, he will. If he doesn't, then he won't. Simple as that. Back to the Jack Stone creepy date. So they're at the dinner date, and she literally looks like she's ready to empty her lunch, and not in a good way. It's just this guy's just making bizarre faces, and it's really becoming weirder by the moment. He tells her he wants to take her to Dallas, and here's the creepy part. Come in. He wants to lock her in a room. Yes, like he couldn't get any weirder. He just did. But to chat. So lock in a room just for a conversation. Because, all, things stem with conversations, getting locked in a room. I mean, you could see Rachel's definitely visibly creeped out. It's game over for Jack. At this point, she doesn't wait another moment to tell him that he's not getting a rose. But he was escorted. Well, he left right away. I mean, at least let the dude finish the meal. But that was cold-blooded. Stone Cold by Rachel? Yeah. Off goes Stone, and goes on a lonely walk to the limo, and he's gone. So that was Jack Stone. Now, what do we have next? An elimination rose ceremony. So not quite the middle of the show, but early to middle of the show we have a rose ceremony. Because we obviously don't have them at the end anymore. Who would need those, right? You could hear the fans on Twitter. That's the thing. You go on Twitter and you hear all these complaints how people want the rose ceremony back late in the show again. And apparently the show's not listening. So this is how we're going to have them. So rose ceremony time. Roses go to Eric, Peter, Adam, I guess with a dummy, Will, Matt, Alex, Josiah, Anthony, and Kenny. And the final rose comes down to Lee, Iggy, and Jonathan. Who gets it? Of course it's Lee. Lee gets a rose. He's the villain. He needs to continue his feud with Kenny. So those two guys, Iggy and Jonathan, will go. As on a little side note, hopefully you guys listened to my interview with Iggy that is available on last week's podcast, and definitely check it out. He shares a lot of interesting, fun things about the show, so definitely can't miss. But back to Lee. He's staying. Tickle Monster's going home. Chicago guy Iggy goes home. And, of course, the rest of the guys are leaving the country on their first trip. So this is like the worst elimination, I think. It's like you stuck around in the house, and now when you finally get going somewhere outside of the country, you got to be sent home. You don't even get to go on that trip. You miss out on it. So that's like an extra gut punch to Iggy and Jonathan just before everyone heads to Norway. So I am literally convinced that this show has a lifetime deal with Scandinavia. Like, yet another trip there. Last time they were in Finland for Nick's season, and now they're headed to Norway. We still have Sweden on the list, so maybe next season's Bachelor will be there. But geez, so first thing we learn when they get to Oslo, Norway, is that the air is definitely thin. Why is it thin? Because Josiah thinks he will actually end up with Rachel. Like, Josiah's talking out of his mind. Nonsense again, how he's going to end up with Rachel. He's not, but yeah, thin air in Oslo, for sure. She just doesn't waste any time. Like, this has been Brian's night, and she just announces he will go on a solo date with her. So you got the kiss, you got the rose, and now he gets the solo date. Brian, back at it. We thought last couple of weeks that he was losing momentum, fading a bit, but that is the last thing he's doing right now because he's gaining a lot of momentum because he has a solo date. So what's their date consist of? They go rappelling 187 feet down. Yeah, that never sounds like a fun date. Oh, what's your date? Well, we're just going to climb on the side of a building, maybe survive, maybe not. That's romantic, right? Yeah, not really. But Rachel's giddy about how safe Brian makes her feel. So it must be all the panting that he's doing, because he's literally panting when he's rappelling. I don't know. She has to be smitten with this guy, and I can't believe why he's a single. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. She's just so into him for whatever reasons, and then she tries to make it known why, right? So she's so smitten with him. She starts listing his best qualities, that she's shocked why he's single. And what does she mention? He's handsome. He has a great job. Oh, so yeah. And then she adds that he's nice. So nice comes third. Obviously, the job and handsome definitely come first. So nice to see Rachel's priorities. Handsome and rich and good job. Yeah, you can date her. Otherwise, probably not. So back at the hotel, Eric is just coming up with wild theories because clearly there's nothing else to do in Oslo. So Eric decides and comes with the conclusion that Rachel isn't into black men. Thankfully, Anthony seems to be the sane one here by putting that theory to rest. Like, literally, he comes up with good reasons why that probably isn't the case. But there's bored Eric, So, back to the dinner date with Rachel and Brian. So, literally, this guy can say anything and she's smitten with him. Like, he could just say charcoal and she loves him, like starry-eyed. Well, maybe just heart-eyed. Yeah, with hearts. It's just crazy. And then Brian starts going about his past. He talks about how he was this bad pickup artist in high school. This is the oldest guy in the group. This is a 37-year-old man reliving his glory of high school. Boy, that's been about 20 years ago, so maybe you should let it go, Brian. I don't think anyone cares about his high school days, right? Or yours especially. But that's all it takes. That's all it takes to convince Rachel to give him a rose. So yeah, he also sneaks in a mention that he's falling in love with her. That always helps, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, group date. So the rest of the guys are going on a group date to play some handball. Yay. This sounds exciting. That also means that there's a 2-on-1 date. Kenny versus Lee. One of them is going home. So there we go. And before that was announced, as soon as that was announced, Kenny, of course, seeks advice in the untouchable Brian. I guess he can give you advice. Brian can say or do anything, so I don't think that's going to work for Kenny. But I guess get it from the best, right? So the group date is a handball game. There's not much of any game. These guys can't play for lick. And the only thing that comes out of this is them, a bunch of dudes, just dressed in spandex, running around chasing each other with no purpose. So, yeah, an embarrassment to the country of Norway that these guys attempt handball. So, too bad. So he, and that being he, would be Will. Yeah, Will. Remember him? I don't. He makes another appearance when he gets some solo time with Rachel. So the solo time. The funny thing is he compares the timelines, and he's trying to get him on the same page as her, kind of, feeling that they're in a similar boat. And he compares the timelines that they both got hurt, meaning him and Rachel by Nick. I don't know how she got hurt by Nick, first of all, but so they were hurt in the same timeline. So it must have been coincidence and meant to be, right? No, it's not meant to be, Will, because the show films at a different timeline than your relationship. So when it's airing now, I don't think you knew when Rachel was getting dumped by Nick, because that was long after that filmed. So wrong timeline, buddy. Then Josiah gets some solo time in, unfortunately. But I give her credit. She calls him out on his bullshit when he asks, she actually asks him if he's rehashing things that, he's read about her through tabloids and just Google her. And it sure seems like he has. And that puts him in an awkward spot because he tries to deny it, but looks bad doing it. Josiah, you just got punked and caught. There we go. She nailed him. and not in the way he would want her to. But Peter, of course, Peter is the front runner too. He makes sure he makes the best of his mingling time by getting in a hot tub with Rachel. Assured of getting a group date rose, right? Nope, Peter is stunned when she gives the rose to little known Will. Ouch. Peter goes in the tub, he thinks he's going to get it, and Will gets it. The timeline, not good timeline, Will. So, now to the fun part, the 2-on-1. The time finally arrived for the 2-on-1 helicopter, as always. You know when there's a helicopter, they're usually going to some jungle or forest or somewhere where you can't get back without a helicopter. And of course, once the helicopter takes Lee and Kenny, one of them won't be coming back, probably gets stranded on an island somewhere. So Kenny gets the first opportunity to talk to Rachel. He kind of lays it all out, and it seems like she's believing him then. And he is being real and genuine from what it seems. Like, I think that guy's pretty genuine. He doesn't seem sneaky, and he seems pretty straightforward. Lee gets his turn, and all he does is just throw Kenny under the bus. That's all he managed to do with his time. One guy's dumping the trash on the other guy, while Kenny seems kind of more focused on Rachel. So this is stuff like that even Corinne and Chad wouldn't have a hard time deciding, who should be staying. And I don't mean like staying behind in the woods, like staying on the show. We know that is going to be, or should be, Kenny, right? So she comes back for Kenny and tattletales again. This is what she's done all season, is tattletale. This time she tells him that what Lee accused him of. So I guess gives him a heads up on it. Rightfully so, probably. It seems like a fair attempt to give an opportunity to defend himself, I would think. But then suddenly Kenny turns a bit neurotic, and he just goes and confronts Lee. But he does it in an odd way. Like this, there's nothing normal or presentable about this. He turns into Kenny King the wrestler. This is the Kenny King wrestler version we see. And of course, to be continued, because we can't just watch the show, right, with a conclusion. No, to be continued. Now, this episode rating, I'd give it about a 7.5 out of 10. I think Brian and Will, definitely the rising ones in this episode, and Josiah falling, for sure. Definitely Brian made a big comeback. He was a bit in a lull for the past few weeks, so he's back, front runner. Peter had a minor setback, but maybe she just can't give him all the roses, right? And then, yes, Will made some headway and even got a rose. Josiah dropped a dagger. And time obviously on the show, his time is numbered. So, but yeah, once again, the show kind of comes down to Lee versus Kenny. And, we've known about this tease 2-on-1, and it's about time, because this feud's really as exciting as it's not exciting technically as the show makes you want to think it is, right? I mean, it's exciting as watching these guys gossip on another. There's nothing good or interesting about it, really. But I mean, it's the only feud they kind of have going on this season, which with all these mild-mannered men, so they have to come up with something, right? So they stretch out the drama to the next episode, which is the next night on Tuesday. And my bet going into that is that both will be going home, right? But we'll see. That's what the show kind of hints at, but will both be going home? Is that what it's ultimately being teased? And maybe ultimately what's going to happen, right? We don't know. We don't know at the end of this conclusion, but it kind of seems that everything's leaning and is favorited towards Kenny. I mean, why would you pick Lee at all? This guy is kind of a joke. But, of course, he's still around. And we will now proceed to episode 6, right? Without further ado, no point of waiting. So the Lee versus Kenny conclusion. Right. So I was kind of wrong on my prediction. And I'll explain in a second. So Kenny, we left off at Kenny confronting Lee in this bizarre way of like, I don't know, it was like a hounding type of, I don't understand. He was like doing his weird gyrations and movements, kind of reminiscent of the Boogeyman, WWE, look him up. So yeah, he kind of confronts Lee, and of course all we needed was just Rachel to show up and interrupt the shenanigans without anything really happening. But she comes with a rose and she announces to Lee that she doesn't trust him and that she's sending him home. So there we go. Quick conclusion. Lee's out. The obvious. What else, right? But on the other hand, Kenny isn't in the clear. He gets to spend more time with her, but he doesn't get the rose. So drama. The helicopter arrives to take Rachel and Kenny away. I don't know where, but he's taking him somewhere. But Kenny can't just see Lee stick around. And what does he do? He goes to confront Lee. Yeah, not the best move and not necessary for sure. Rachel's pissed about this. So yeah, that's not a good move to go back to confront Lee and give him his peace of mind towards the end. What for, right? But Kenny manages to get back finally to the hotel. That's kind of the next scene. And he kind of explains to her, wants to get a last shot, right? That he's the right man for her. But as we know, Rachel's a tough cookie. But he does manage to convince her that he's there for her. She believes him and offers him a rose to stay. So there we go. Kenny's still sticking around. So then we see Kenny get the opportunity to Skype and FaceTime with his daughter. Which is like really one of the nicer moments in the season to see kind of Kenny talk to his daughter, and it shows him in a positive light. It shows that Kenny's a good dude. There's no denying that. It's nice. It's a nice moment that the show should include more of. It's a genuine moment that kind of validates how real this guy is and genuine he is. Now the next scene, what do we have? A roast ceremony. Yes, a roast ceremony. Need one of those, right? So now it's dwindling. It's not that many roses to give out. Dean, Eric, Peter, Alex, and Adam get the final roses, and the actual final one comes down to Matt, Josiah, and Anthony. So I was holding hope that Josiah doesn't get it, and he didn't. I think he did himself in when she called him out on his BS. I think that was it. But who does the rose go to? Matt. Now, I still don't know who this man is. Like, I don't know why he's on the show. Does anyone even care? But the best thing about this is that Josiah's going home. So, that's good. The other part is that Eric continues his crusade. And he comes up with another theory that Rachel isn't into black men. I mean, this guy is just something else. Like, I don't know where he's coming up from. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, she sent two of them home, Anthony and Josiah, but there's still black men on the show. What's Eric so worried about? He's on the show. So there we go. Now, welcome to Denmark, right? Yes, that is the place where things get going kind of next. So they left Norway, got to hit up Denmark. We're leaving Scandinavia for a bit. So they go from Oslo to Copenhagen. Their European adventure continues, and Eric gets a solo date with her. So the complainer finally gets his chance, right? And, wow, I just actually noticed he's a personal trainer from LA. I mean, finally a personal trainer on the show. There's really been kind of a lack of them, I'd say, on this job type on this show, so thankfully Eric at least takes care of that, and the last 100 contestants before him. So no wonder he's a personal trainer. That kind of explains it all. Yeah. So they parade around Copenhagen, right? And Rachel claims Eric is so happy and free. That's hard to believe, but she must be probably talking about a different guy, right? Yeah, she should be. Not this Eric, the complainer, right? Now, at the hotel, group date card arrives and everyone's going besides Will, who gets a solo date. So these are some interesting solo dates coming up. Back to Eric and Rachel. They go to a local carnival. Then they have the dinner, and Eric reveals he doesn't know how to deal with love, but he's falling for her. So he doesn't know how to deal with love, but he's falling for her. Do explain, Eric. Not sure. But anyway, that ended up earning him a rose. So he got what he wanted. Eric did get cheated, though, because he doesn't get the live band performing at a dinner date. But he gets a mini roller coaster ride. So does that defeat the usual dinner, dance party afterwards? That with a live band and a dance, that's usually after almost every dinner date. But clearly they are not in LA anymore. Now, on to the fun stuff. The group date. And that starts off on a boat ride. And the boat leads them straight to the Viking games. No, not Minnesota Vikings. They're not in Minnesota, but they are there. There's two clowns, aka Viking instructors, dressed in some fancy Viking attire that are teaching the guys about the Viking. Yeah, that's how one of these Danish guys is saying it. Viking, like Y, and then king. Not Viking, Viking. So the competition start. The guys are dressed goofy in these medieval Viking outfits. They don't really look like Viking outfits. Kind of look just like medieval times. Not as fun as medieval times, though. So yeah, the competition, and I mean, these dudes look goofy in their Viking costumes. Even goofier practicing these competitional stuff. Comes out to Kenny and Adam for the main prize. So this time, Kenny doesn't throw the competition and puts the guy over because he wins. So no more putting guys over. Kenny finally wins the competition. What does he win? Nothing really. There's no significance of anything that he's won. Maybe some time with her, right? So after a group date, former and recent Viking Brian gets some alone time with Rachel, right? Good stuff. So they waste no time, but immediately start making out. This is a common theme for those two. At the hotel, Will is nervously spewing random thoughts of excitement about his upcoming date, which Eric only responds to like, yeah. That's pretty much Eric's responses. But once Brian's done schmoozing Rachel, Peter's up next with her. She barely begins talking to him before she, capital she, asks him to kiss her. Damn, that girl's coming on strong. But yeah, that's what Peter gets. Now, Rachel plays catch up with Kenny, right? Who seems to be struggling a bit. He makes the huge mistake by telling her he doesn't know if they were progressing together, right? Basically, that's like asking to be eliminated. So she grants him his walking papers and sends him home. Kenny doesn't even seem too beat up about it. Kenny's all about his daughter, and hard to doubt that after what we saw. But he also must have seen the writing on a wall. So Kenny goes and to be seen in a wrestling ring soon, right? You would think. I mean, ultimately, she just wasn't that into him. If she was, she'd be fighting for him, really, and to stay, not to leave, and walk away that easily. So, daughter or not, I don't think it would have mattered. As far as that group date goes, that goes to, guess, Peter. Of course, Peter. So now, the Will date. So their solo date, Rachel and Will are leaving the country. Like, seriously, they're heading to Sweden. So now we've covered all of Scandinavia. Hit up Denmark. Now the Bachelor has definitely gotten their free-for-all, So no Sweden for next season, maybe. But their itinerary isn't all that good, considering they're stuck with this older Swedish couple who are literally bragging about all the years they've been together. So Will won't even get a smidge of that with Rachel. But Rachel is disappointed he isn't making any romantic attempts at her, right? I mean, this dude seems like a real prude. The dinner talk isn't making things better either. Will tells her that he mostly dates white women, but Rachel doesn't take that in a good way. So that was the camel that broke the back. She picks up the rose and calls him out on his lack of passion. So quite the tease there, huh? and off he goes into the rain. There's just no chemistry between them two. I didn't even know what Will was doing on the show and who he was, so this is a big surprise, actually, that he lasted this long. How? I don't know. But it looks like we get 2 rose ceremonies in this episode. That's a rarity. So, roses are being really thrown around all over it on this episode. She enters the rose ceremony kind of talking about some Shakespeare nonsense, starts to cry, walks out of the rose ceremony, onto the roses, and her alleged hardest goodbye then. Okay, she comes back. So the roses go to Brian, Matt, Dean. And we know Peter already has a rose, right? So now the final rose comes down to Adam and Alex. And someone with an A in their name is gonna go home, right? So it will be Adam that's staying. So Russian, nerdy, intellectual, meathead Alex bids farewell. Alex didn't really get much time on this season. Apparently the women loved him on Twitter, so I finally figured out. Alex looks literally like a hybrid of Jeremy Jackson. You know, Jeremy Jackson from Baywatch, Hobie. Yeah, like an adult version of Jeremy Jackson, and Jake Gyllenhaal. You can even go individually with each one, but Jeremy Jackson, Jake Gyllenhaal combined, that's Alex. I am quite shocked. No named Matt and ventriloquist man Adam got stuck around still. And no idea how and why. And with that, this episode comes to an end. So, episode rating of about an 8 out of 10. Rising, Eric, Matt, and Adam for sure. And falling, Kenny and Will, both eliminated. This episode had a lot of fat trimmed, and by that I mean just a lot of eliminations in one episode. This is now getting down to the serious contenders, so hometowns will be coming up soon. We lost Lee, thankfully. Well, not in real life, he's alive. Josiah, Anthony, Kenny, Will, and Alex, all gone. Jeez, that's half a dozen men in one episode. I mean, wow. I was kind of surprised, though, with Anthony and Alex got sent home. I thought you could have replaced them easily with Matt and Adam, right? What are those two guys doing? I don't know. But Kenny, I kind of expected it, as I called it last episode, right? Lee was a given. Josiah was a minor surprise, but he dug his own grave in a sense. But yeah, how Matt and Adam are in the final 6, that's improbable. If you made bets, you probably would have come out with a lot of money because no one saw those two guys last because no one really hears them talk ever. So I can't find a way to see them making it to hometown. I just don't. Not these two guys. So they will be next 2 to go in whichever order. Probably both on the same episode. It's not a matter if Matt and Adam will get eliminated, but when. As far as this episode, it was solid. Good to finally see some exciting eliminations and 2 rose ceremonies in one episode. And then, of course, Peter and Brian keep on separating themselves from the rest, and clear frontrunners right now with Dean kind of lurking in the background. I think it's a 3-man race at this point. And the other 3, Matt, Adam, Eric, maybe, but that's about it. I'm kind of losing my voice, if you guys can hear me right now. That's what happens when you review 2 podcasts, right? In one time. Kind of lose your voice. Get winded, too. So that will conclude for this week. 2 episode recap. So, wow, did it just over half an hour. Not bad. But yeah, as always, you guys, make sure to tune in next week. Check out my interview with Iggy Rodriguez from the show. He just got eliminated last episode, but he has a ton to say about the show. A lot of interesting points about his experience and who he likes, who he doesn't. Minor spoilers. So cool things on that. As always, you can tweet at me at JimRKO. That's at JIMRKO on Twitter. And check me out on Instagram, Jim.Alexander11 or Jim Alexander 11. Yeah, I don't even know anymore. But yeah, that's how you can reach me. And of course, check out my website for all the blogs and a lot more details, I guess. Maybe less. I don't know. Writing more details or talking? Probably both. Maybe a little bit of different insight. But that is over at thebacheloruniverse.com. So THE bacheloruniverse.com. I have an interesting article about my experience auditioning for the Bachelor and Bachelorette show in person in Chicago, and they did auditions. I'll mention more about it next week. How about that? We'll delve into that after the recap of next episode. So, for now, I am out, and I will talk to you guys next week with more Bachelorette info. Make sure to check this podcast out at, all the fun places. Bachelor Universe, you can Google it, or check it out, iTunes, Stitcher, all those fun places. So for now, my voice is gone, almost eliminated, as all these half dozen men this episode. My voice is the seventh. See ya.